you to ask questions in turn. And just say, if you're addressing it to a particular person, say who it is to. And yes, to the point as possible so that we get a good discussion going. Did you have a question, or were you saying something about?
No, I have a question.
Oh, you have a question. Okay, your hand was up first, so I must ask you first.
So, I have a question to the gentleman. I'm sorry, I'm not ignorant, but I didn't catch the name. Yes, you said that the world would not let the Balochistan break away from Pakistan. And yes,
So that's
yeah, that's it. You said the world would not let the Balochistan to break away from Pakistan and destabilize the South Asia. But South Asia is already destabilized because lack of recognition of the people. So what's the world going to do if the people believe they are nation, they have history, they have myth, they have national anthem, they have national flag, and they are believing their right has been denied. They are occupied people. So how the world going to react to this? It's not a matter of what world want, what the Baloch want. What do you think that by the suppressing the Baloch, the world can stabilize the South Asia without thing? I mean, most of the thing, the stabilization in South Asia, is Balochistan is part of that struggle for the independence. So without,
okay,
yeah.
So because I think we know the question, so you are not here when someone was speaking, and he did make the point that he did not think that the international community was ready to support an independent Balochistan, no matter how justified the arguments could be in favor of such a thing. And I think it was related to their fear of instability, especially in a nuclear armed Pakistan, the fear of instability there would be the impact on that.
I mean, I think we have to be brutally frank. The international community is not swayed by moral arguments. It's actually swayed by strategic interests. And the strategic interest of the United States and dominant powers is that what they don't want to see is increased instability in Pakistan. And if it means ignoring repression and the crushing of rebellion within the country, they will do that. And they have done that in Pakistan's history. No one talks, I mean, every time we had a military regime in Pakistan, I told you that, always we had problems with ethnicity, whether it was with Sindhis or whether it was with Baloch today. The world never cried for these people because always the concern about their strategic interest was with a particular regime which was in power at that moment. Whether it was to do with the Cold War, today it's with the war on terrorism, and its linked and concerned with nuclear proliferation. These are its strategic interests. If it means that there will be blood spilled to maintain them, they're quite easily and quite willing to turn their heads and look the other way. That sounds like a very brutal factor. I think, that's the way it works, because there are many people who are oppressed in the world and who have not been given the right, no matter how strong their moral argument has been.
Yeah, well, first, I must mention David Joss for opening. Since this is about half of my PhD thesis, I have about millions of questions there. But the first thing, which I think sort of, I never thought I'd say that, is that, when you were mentioning the role of the military, I just thought I'd point out that, for the initial 10 years, it wasn't a military issue, it was a political issue. It began in 1947-48 as a political issue, and I think that's where the seeds of it were sown when, a country becomes a part of another country, where it doesn't want to be a part of that country. And inevitably you have to use the military because there was no police in that area. And up till 2002, even technically, they were not settled areas. There were only two settled districts in 1947, 48, Quetta and Rishni, and that's it. So in that terms, it's very different. Like, the Pakistani government could not send the military if there's an insurgency in Sindh, for example, because you have the police. So that might be the first wave to deal with it. So in some ways, this is sort of a political thing where the military has been brought in to bolster up the political questions there, which begin from Jinnah. So I think the roots of it, as were mentioned, going back to the 18th century, I think are quite essential to look into. And also, I don't want to sort of put you on the spot for that, but because you mentioned the whole question of the region and how to imagine the region. How sort of, if you're looking sort of at the intellectual history of things, is this imagined really? Like, how do you think this is actually done? I can, for example, say Oxfordshire could be a new region, and the people of Oxfordshire wanted Pence. Like, I'm sure you know about the instance of Cornwall. You could say 400 years ago Cornwall was illegally occupied. So how is this from an intellectual history perspective? How is the region imagined, and how do you think it's sort of taking shape in the whole Baloch imagination of it? And if I can sort of make my last question to you, Kwari, is that when you're talking about the Baloch people, and when you said the Baloch need to regain their sovereignty, what are you actually talking about? Are you talking about the state of Kalat? Are you talking about, because one historical point I want to make is that for at least the last, the 200 years of the state of Kalat, the Bhutto and the Murray areas weren't a part of it. They were never recognized a part of it since, for the last 200 years. So it's quite interesting that, we've got the Murrays and the Bhuttis leading the Baloch movement calling for the restoration, whereas they weren't legally a part of the state of Kalat for a long, long time. So when you are saying the Baloch people, the President Zardari is ethnically a Baloch. Is he a part of that? The state of Khairpur, for example, the Talpurs, all of them are Baloch, ethnically. So, how is that going to fit in? And then again, of course, as you know, the state of Kalat had Quetta and Rishni. That's a majority Pakhtun area. Are you going to include them in this state of Balochistan? They might not want to be in it. And the last, perhaps, would be the Baraulis. What happens to them? They made a confederation with this state of Kalat, but that was centuries ago. So, how's that, when you speak about Balochistan or the Baloch, what does it really mean on the ground? Is it going to be, 3/4 of Sindh, also by the end of it? Are you looking at it ethnically? And who are you going to include and who are you going to exclude? And what is going to resurrect? Because historically, of course, 1,000,001 things have happened, but, it's very hard to go back on it at times. Thanks.
I'm going to take it quickly in order. Did you want to comment on the comment?
Well, yeah, I don't have any real difficulty with the argument that this is actually essentially a political issue. There is a hiatus. From the 1980s, after the 1980s, the rebellion against in Bhutto's period, there was, in Zia's time, there was some kind of cessation of hostility. Now the question is, why did we have a political process which brought Baloch into the Pakistani state? Why did we have these kinds of political initiatives? What has happened is, it's the failure of politics. It's the complete failure of politics, and it is the resorting to military solutions to political problems that we have this crisis. And so, my view is essentially, the problem is the military, because all they can think about is shooting people. What we want to do is be talking to people.